97-year-old lists Rozelle home she has lived in since 1927. Having lived in the same house for 90 years, May Bartlett knows a thing or two about the history of Sydney's inner west. The 97-year-old moved into 1 Callan Street in Rozelle when her grandparents, Blanche and John Botsford, bought it in 1927. "My grandparents, who raised me, bought 1 Callan Street when I was just turning 8," Mrs. Bartlett said. "They got a small inheritance from their family in England and could afford the £430 to buy the 1-bedroom house. My grandfather divided the front room to make a bedroom for me." Mrs. Bartlett said she remembers a time when the street didn't have footpaths. Callan Street was a dirt road with no formed footpaths, just dirt and rubble, she said. The bottom of Callan Street was a dairy with cows feeding on the grass field, and Victoria Road was called Weston Road and was a 2-lane road with tram lines up the middle. Electricity was another thing that Mrs. Bartlett lived without in the early days in the house. "We had no electricity at 1 Callan Street, only gas light, and that was only in 1 room," she said. "Every other room you had to light a kerosene lamp. The toilet down the yard had a candle and a box of matches in case you had to go in the middle of the night." Not only did Mrs. Bartlett grow up in the house herself, she also raised her own children there. "When I married in 1947, my husband moved in so we could care for my grandmother in her final years. My daughter, Marilyn, was born in 1950 and lived at 1 Callan Street until she married in 1971, and my other daughter, Wendy, was born in 1954 and lived there until 1974. Both May and her husband Jim went to Rozelle Public School, as did their 2 daughters. The steady increase in Rozelle property prices in recent years is proof of the suburb's popularity, but that wasn't always the case, according to Mrs. Bartlett. "Rozelle was very much a working-class suburb," she said. "You never heard of anyone going to university. It seems like only 20 or 30 years ago that Rozelle began to become a fashionable address." Mrs. Bartlett said the best thing about Rozelle today is the people. "Rozelle has a village atmosphere with people looking out for each other," she said. "We are so close to the city, yet it has a village country feel. The park and the bay run are a central meeting point, with play equipment for the children and exercise areas and space to spread out and be with family and friends." The house itself went through some changes in 1954 when Mr. Bartlett gradually renovated it. Mrs. Bartlett said he pulled down the back of the house to build a kitchen, dining room and bathroom. He worked at CSR in Permont as a boiler maker and would do overtime on weekends for extra money to buy the materials for the renovations. "It was a slow process because we just built as we could afford to pay for it." For the first time in 90 years, the much-loved home has been listed on the market with Peter Gordon of Cobden and Hayson and goes to auction this Saturday. It has a price guide of $1.15 million.